Who was Mel Chancey before the fitness world got to know you?
I was 14 years old. I was flipping the magazine to you yourself, Lee Haney and stuff, and became a bodybuilding fan. Well, it was in a gym where I met a couple older guys. Not only showed me how to lift weights the correct way, lo and behold, they were members of a Chicago motorcycle club called the Henchmen, which later in life we merged with the Hells Angels. 23, turning 24 when I became the president of the Hells Angels. The Brotherhood was great. But in that lifestyle, that brotherhood, when you're in that lifestyle comes the nonsense, right? It was what I say, the shenanigans, right? And, as a young man, I used to say to the new guys coming in, you ready for this? Well, there's two spots, the Tombstone or the Penitentiary. And I thought that was like a cool line until I got there. The federal government came in and said, enough of this. Shootings, the bombings, everything that they're doing.
Is there a turning point at which you surrender to God?
So then when I went away to the state penitentiary, that's when I reconnected with the Lord again, my faith. I said, all right, Lord, I'm down on my knees, Lee. And I said, I'm giving you the wheel. I'm tired of crashing the car. I'm going to sit in the passenger seat, Lord, and I'm giving you the full surrender.
What do you want people to remember Mel Chancey for?
Sure I was ever asked that question. That's a good one.
Welcome to the Labrada Show.
Brought to you by Lean Body, the #1 protein shake in gyms across America.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Labrada Show. I am here to help you improve yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually. We have a really exciting guest for you today. But first, be sure to hit the subscribe button below so that you won't miss any future episodes of my show. And look for us on Spotify if you want to listen on your drive to work. Today on the show, we're sitting down with a very good friend of mine who has one of the most powerful stories of redemption that I have ever witnessed. His life story is so amazing that it's being made into a movie by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. My guest is a survivor with an amazing personal transformation from the leader of one of America's most notorious motorcycle gangs to becoming a Christian disciple, a father, a devoted husband, a grandfather, a champion of the bodybuilding community, and an inspiration to thousands. And his story is only beginning when he received a second chance in life in that moment when he found God. I'm proud to call him a brother in Christ. Mel Chancey, welcome to the show.
Lee, thank you for that amazing intro. And I am humbled and grateful to be here finally with you. We've talked about this for quite some time, and now it's coming to fruition here, and what an exciting time, huh?
Well, brother, we're so grateful that you're here and that you took time out of your busy schedule to fly all the way from Florida to be here with us here in Houston today.
Yeah.
And just super excited that we're going to be able to share this time and share your story. So, Mel, let's start from the beginning. For those of us that might not know your story, who was Mel Chancey before the fitness world got to know you?
So I was born and raised in a very strict Italian Catholic home, and was an altar boy, catechism, the whole 9 yards, Lee, and knew the Lord, and for that whole, my younger years. And when I was a bodybuilding fan is growing up. The first time I seen a He-Man cartoon, I fell in love with He-Man. And then by the time I was born in 69, I'm 56. By the time I was 14 years old, I was flipping the magazines, and lo and behold, to you yourself and likes like Lee Haney and stuff, and became a bodybuilding fan. Well, it was in a gym where I met a couple older guys that were a decade, 10, 12 years older than me, that not only showed me how to lift weights the correct way, like, hey kid, get over here, let me show you, you're doing that wrong, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong. And lo and behold, they were members of a Chicago motorcycle club called the Hells Henchmen, which later in life we merged with the Hells Angels. So wow. Them guys not only showed me how to train, like I said, but took me under their wing and showed me that motorcycle world at that young age of 18.
So of course you're a young guy. You're 18 years old, and these are bigger guys, more seasoned. They're showing you how to work out. They're showing you how to be a bodybuilder. Mm-hmm. And of course they're into motorcycles. They're into the gang. You're probably thinking that's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool to see these guys. They were jacked up, And I always say, like, they always trained in jeans, and I always say, bikers back in the day didn't train legs, right? But
right.
I did, because I was a bodybuilding fan. So, once I found out that they were in part of the motorcycle club, and I went down there to the clubhouse for a party and stuff, and you're supposed to be 21 to get into the club back in the days, and I wasn't. I was young and but they seen I was gun-ho and stuff. So at 19 years old, I started my prospecting period for the Hell's Henchmen Motorcycle Club. So, from there, you know, I was probably about 5 years later, where we merged with the Hells Angels and became the first Hells Angel chapters in the Midwest.
So you were like 23, maybe?
23, turning 24 when I became the president of the Hells Angels.
Man.
I was young getting into the Henchmen, and you know, the president from there was a longtime president, 15 years or plus, and then they passed the reins down to me when I was 23, turned into 24.
That's just amazing how fast that happened to you. What was life like on a day-to-day basis for you?
You know, at first it was okay because there was no skirmishes or no conflicts with any other motorcycle clubs. But once we brought the Hells Angels and became Hells Angels into the Midwest, then of course that was the home of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. That was their, you know, they were the big 1%ers like the Angels, but the Midwest was their hub. There was no Hells Angels there.
So they didn't like it when you guys came in?
They did not like it, us infringing, even though we were already a club, but now we brought their enemies in right into their backyard.
So what happens?
So that started all the tension and things we see on Gangland today with, they put the third largest bomb in 1994 on our clubhouse, the third largest bomb in the United States, meaning, you know, an explosion. The first one was the trade centers. And I said this before in a podcast, not the plane, the trade centers, when they blew it up from underneath in the parking garage. Oklahoma City, McVeigh, and then 100 pounds of C4 on our clubhouse. Wow. In front of our clubhouse. So the third largest bomb. So that, what we call the war, what they nicknamed the war, but them turmoils got crazy in the city of Chicago.
So it was tit for tat. Did anybody get killed?
Yes, I have some tombstones on my arms. We lost 4 members of the club. 2 I put on. I stopped putting the tombstones on. I said, this has got to be an omen. I'm not doing this no more, right?
Yeah, right.
And they lost some of their brothers on their side, and until finally, you know, 1997 came and the government RICO'd a bunch of the Outlaws and got them on the racketeering indictment, and then ours was later in 2004 that we all got the racketeering indictment. So that's really what stopped that. The federal government came in and said, enough of this. Shootings, the bombings, the everything that they're doing, you know,
So Mel, what's your attitude at that point? In other words, you got the feds coming in and looking at what you guys are doing. Are you scared at that point? Are you thinking of turning away from it? What are your thoughts at that age?
Oh, at that young age, and you know, the invincibility you feel that you're part of and stuff. And I was already big because I started bodybuilding so young. So by the time I was 24, 25 now, I was already 275, 280 pounds training, and, you know, was good with my hands. And, the you know, they taught me the violence part 2 of that world and stuff like that. So I was focused 100% on, you know, my crew and the Hells Angels and making us the #1 motorcycle club, the dominant factor in the Chicagoland area in Illinois. And that was what I did. I put my family on hold, even though I always was around and seeing my family, but my main objective was the club.
Yeah, and so you basically you know, launched all your energy into that. At what point does that climax, that part of your life climax, and you say to yourself, you know, there's got to be more than this? When was the turning point?
So the turning point was 1997 and 8. I went away to state prison for beating a guy up pretty bad that was beating an ex-girlfriend of mine up. So I got a 3-year sentence for aggravated battery on that. So I'm off to the state penitentiaries. Never been to prison before. Always kind of knew, we always had this thing that we'd tell each other, there's, you know, in the club, there's 2 spots for us, a tombstone on somebody's chest or penitentiary. This is what this life brings. We used to tell the new guys coming in, if you don't want to do either one, this is not for you. It's not the Boy Scouts. Even though we're a motorcycle club, we're at a big skirmish with these other guys, and people are dying, and law enforcement's on us, right? So then when I went away to the state penitentiaries that time, that's when I reconnected with the Lord again, my faith. Because like I said, I knew him. I grew up very strict in a strict family. And
so going to prison saved your life?
Saved my life. I said that was the time out I needed. That was the first time. while I was doing my state sentence, the feds came in and indicted me when I was already in custody, and they had a charge on me that I had to go give them 18 months for. So when I got released from the state penitentiary that day, they switched the handcuffs. The federal marshals took me, and they took me off to a federal penitentiary that I did that 18 months for. Then I came home. I was on something called non-association, where I couldn't see a Hell's Angel. If I walked into a grocery store and they were there, I had to leave. I couldn't, non-association, couldn't see or talk to anybody. And that 3 years, Lee, gave me that time to really look and see what I was doing in life. And I was looking back, and I was like, I came from such a good family and an upbringing, and look what we did, and it was nothing that was pushed on me. I always say I wasn't the innocent boy in the woods and these guys were telling me, go do this, go do that. I took that upon myself. Right. Nobody forced me to live that lifestyle. I fell in love with it, and I just went 100 miles an hour. But that time out in them prison cells and then coming home and not being able to be part of the club and getting onto my life. And I was running some big nightclubs that a friend of mine owned. I was putting all the security in nightclubs. So now I had a legal job that I was doing. I was, back seeing my daughter all the time, who's now, 38 years old, and doing the family things. And I was like, okay, I can't continue to live this lifestyle. So once I got off the non-association in 2004, that's when I made my exit from the club. And I got with the fellows and said, listen, I can't do this no more. I gave 13 years of my life to the club, some rough years through the whole, outlaw and angel skirmishes that were going on. And it's time for me to live for my life, for myself, my family. And I couldn't give it 100%. Just like we say in the bodybuilding, when you just know it's not there no more, you retire from competition.
So retiring from competition is one thing, because that's a personal choice with no social dynamics. But when you are retiring from one of the most notorious motorcycle gangs in America, did they give you a hard time on the way out, or did they say you're not going anywhere?
Well, the fellas, when I was, we call it, there's no retirement, we call it you quit the club. When I was quitting the club, of course, my crew in Chicago was, they were like more sad than anything. They were coming over. They were coming to my mom and dad's house, who my mom and dad knew everybody in the club. My mom being the old strict Italian lady, my dad, they didn't like the club. But they liked the fellows.
They didn't like what they did.
They didn't like what we did, but they liked the individuals.
Right.
When I was away in prison, them guys were coming over to the house, and I'd call home to check in, and my mom would say, hold on, I'm going to pass the phone around. 3-4 of the fellows are here, and they're eating Italian dinners with them, watching out for my parents. The brotherhood was great. But in that lifestyle, that brotherhood, and when you're in that lifestyle comes the nonsense, right? It was what I say, the shenanigans, right? So the fellas were like, come on, man, what are you doing? And, of course, didn't want me to leave the club, because I was that guy to everybody. I wasn't the leader that was sitting up in the ivory tower and saying, you guys go here and do this. I was running through the doors first and foremost with everybody. I was a young man, so I wanted to be part of the fun. If we were going into a bar and cutting the phone wires in the back, because back in the day, nobody had phones or cell cameras. Cameras, right? If you had the big brick phone, so nobody could record you. So we'd cut the phone wires, or the wires on the way in, so the cameras would go off, the phones would go off, and we'd come in, and if the enemy was in there, we'd smash him in the bar. Right. So at that young age, that was kind of an adrenaline rush to me. Right. So I was like, you guys ain't going without me. I'm coming first. So everybody knows I was the leader that was on all hands on. I was all in 100%. I always say I wasn't the innocent boy and somebody was pulling the strings. I was running.
So you decide that you've had enough, that you have to change your life, and emotionally and mentally, what's happening inside you? What are you thinking?
I remember, making that decision, and when I went to the state prison, that's when I really got into my deep fellowship, my prayer time with the Lord. And I said, I want you to guide me. I knew about full surrender, and I would say I gave him about 70% of that, because when I came home, and thought I was doing okay, I wasn't, shooting guys off motorcycles and blowing buildings up and in this biker skirmish, but I still had the womenizing in me. I still had the fast switch for the violence and stuff like that. So I didn't really get the full surrender. until the second time I went off to prison.
So what are the events that led up to the second time? Because you got out of the state prison and you're basically in that 3-year period where you're just basically separating yourself.
Yeah, separate.
How do you go back?
So the feds had a racketeering case going against us all. So when they indicted me in 2004, I'd left the club early in 2004, and then they came with the indictment at the very end of 2004. And all of the charges were from the 90s.
Okay.
So it was all this stuff.
So you were paying past dues.
I was paying the penance for the past dues, because with the RICO, the statute of limitations stops. Once they put the investigation on, the older, it kind of shows it, like when I pled guilty to the charges in 2005, that some of the charges were 10 years old, and people were saying, ain't there statute of limitations? There's not with RICO, because it shows the overall pattern, like, hey, these guys haven't been bad guys for a year or two. They've been kind of bad guys for the last 10 years and stuff. And, a RICO's a slam dunk with a jury, because they get to see everything that you were doing for all of them years,
Right.
And they call it a continual criminal enterprise.
So you go to the federal penitentiary. Did bodybuilding become a vehicle for you to cope inside?
The first time I was away in the state penitentiaries, they had weights. I got to the first federal penitentiary in, I believe, late 99 into 2000. They had some weights, but there was a law that they passed, and they said if the weights break, they wouldn't replace them.
Wow.
So when I get to the federal penitentiaries in 2005, there's really no weights. So everything for me was calisthenics and stuff, but it was like a break I was taking, Lee, because I was training for so many years already, and I was so big, and, so a few injuries here and there. So I took it as, I'm going to take a break. I'm not going and lifting a couple dumbbells that they have. I started doing the cardio, calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, and all that stuff, and pull-ups and stuff like that. And I did that for the time I was away. So I came home much smaller. When I went away on the RICO, I was 290 pounds. When I came home,
you're how tall?
5'10".
That's a big guy.
Yeah, I was big. Yeah, because that was, I always trained. No matter what I was doing in life, what state I was in, if I was running anything for the club, I was on club business at parties or whatever, anniversary parties, I hit the local gym, and I always trained. And once I got that out of the way for the day, that was like, it was like my job. I had to train, and I look back and say now that was my escape, me getting in that gym and training. There was a period of time in Chicago when this war got real crazy. When I trained at this Gold's Gym, I had to have a few of the fellas there, sitting up front watching to make sure nobody came in the door and decided to come in and hit me with an axe handle when I was doing flies. Yes,
wow.
So, people are like, this guy's got to bring security to the gym, but it just had to be that way because, I was the target for the other team over there that wanted to take me out of the business there.
So you're in the federal penitentiary. Do you have an epiphany in there? Is there a turning point at which you surrender to God?
Yeah. So it was February. I don't know the exact date, but it was February of 2005. Just was in there for a few months. No sentencing yet. The feds take you for a while. It was 18 months later till I finally pled guilty to all these charges. Your lawyer's trying to get in there. 10-year investigation, a lot of paperwork that they got to look over. It was only a couple months in. And I just remember being in a cell by myself. And I said, all right, Lord, not sure how I got here. And then I go, let me take that back. I am sure how I got here. I said, but, I thought coming home from the first time, I changed my life. I go, but you know what? This is from the old days. I said, but guess what? I'm down on my knees, Lee. And I said, I'm giving you the wheel. I'm tired of crashing the car. I'm going to sit in the passenger seat, Lord, and I'm giving you the full surrender, not the 70% I gave you when I came home the first time. I'm giving you the full surrender. Don't know what I'm looking at. If I would have went to trial and fought the government and lost, which we would have lost, there was 4 of us, my mandatory minimum was 24 years at 85%.
So how did it get shortened?
So I ended up getting 111 months pleading guilty, which was 9-3. That's what I ended up getting. My co-defendants got 50 months right off the bat. I got something enhanced, what they call a leadership organizer role that they enhanced me with, right? So I never think that I was going to be able to come down to the 50 months. I went away with the 111 months. But almost 3.5 years later, they brought me back in, and the judge gave me the 50 months as the other 3 co-defendants got. I got the exact same time. I was so surprised, Lee, because that usually doesn't happen. Usually, if you're getting a time cut, you testified against somebody on your trial, or you did something like that, right? And people would know that, right? And I never had to go and test. When we all pled guilty, none of us went to trial. We all pled guilty to the charges. We all said we're here. I was already out of the club, so I quit. These 3 guys were still in the club, so they got thrown out of the club bad because the club didn't want them to plead guilty to racketeering,
right?
Because it shows that it's a criminal organization.
Sure.
They just changed my status to out bad because I pled guilty to the RICO. But all 4 of us on that case, there was no other superseding indictments.
So what do you think transpired for your sentence to be shortened?
I always say the hand of God, because I did not ever think that was going to happen. When I got sentenced to that 111 months, I said, okay, that's 9 years. I'm going to be here for 7.5, 85% of it. It was a big shock to me that 3.5, 4 years later, when they came back in and said, we're bringing you back into court, and the judge is going to resentence you, and it's looking like he's going to give you the 50 months your co-defendants got. It was a big shock to me and to everybody else. So it was great. I always say the hand of God. God always has a plan. I always got this term, I say no coincidences in the kingdom, but, and I didn't know, when I said, you take the wheel and you're, driving the vehicle of my life, I didn't get the key the next day and get out.
Of course.
Right? I still went to some pretty shady federal penitentiaries with some hardcore people, not knowing. I was just giving it up to him. But in them penitentiaries, I was able to fellowship with a lot of people. A lot of Bible studies got laid down. A lot of guys that were hard guys, all of a sudden walking in the door of the Bible study, who at first they weren't. It was only a couple of us doing our private Bible study and stuff. And then all of a sudden I see an Aryan Brotherhood guy walk through the door. And at first I'm like, what's he coming in here to interrupt our Bible study? And he goes, can I sit down? And I was like, his name was Kevin. And I said, yeah, Kevin, sit down. And here is a non-believer who was doing life in the federal penitentiary, and one of the Aryan Brotherhood members come in and asked for a Bible.
Wow.
So, I seen the platform starting.
You see it starting to happen.
Yeah, and I remember one time in my fellowship, in my prayer, and I said, all right, Lord, I see what you're doing when I'm in here. I said, if I don't have to be here for 1,000,000 years eating honey buns and ramen noodles, I would appreciate that, but it's your will. And here I am. Protect me, because these were some a lot of hardcore places, and here I am, and I fellowshipped with so many amazing people by the time I came home. And
you took a very bad situation and you turned it into something that created value for other people.
Yeah,
and brought them to God.
And I was telling you this at dinner last night, or breakfast. So that guy Kevin that came in, who when I left him in 2008 was just going on his 30th year locked up. And when I was leaving, he said to me, we were having coffee the morning, and he said to me, he goes, Mel, you are a breath of fresh air in here. And I said, huh? And he goes, I've been locked up for so long, and I've been to every federal penitentiary in this country. And he goes, never did I see someone like you, with always walking past the smiling. You made it kind of joyful in a bad situation. And I got along with everybody in there. I sat with the Muslims. I sat with the gangster disciples, the Latin kings. I sat with the ABs. The race was never a thing to me. I grew up very, very in a loving home, right? My family's best friends were of color. I've only known that, right? That's how my family raised me, very loving, and that's how I was raised. So I was kicking it with everybody in there. Back up in one of the state penitentiaries, they shipped me out of a penitentiary after the 4th of July, and I went into the internal affairs office, and they said, "Yeah, Mel, we're shipping you out of here tomorrow." And I said, "For what? What did I do?" And they said, "Well, we're going to show you the video from yesterday. Here you are breaking bread with the gangster disciples. Then you go over to the Latin King, yard, and you're breaking bread with them. Then you're over at the ABs." I go, "Well, it was a picnic. Everybody was having their picnic in their sections of the yard." I said, "I'm not on no kind of racial page. Why should I? What did I do wrong?" But it's almost like they didn't want that common denominator of somebody getting along with everybody.
Maybe you were up to something.
Yeah. and they shipped me to another state penitentiary. So, but that always sticks in my head what that guy Kevin said to me, you know, for coming from a guy that's seen it all and has been in the worst ones, for him to tell me that.
Well, that speaks to the positive influence that you had while you were in there.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I said, you know, Lord, use me. I said, but, you know, if I don't have to be here a million years eating ramen noodles,
right.
Here I am, though.
So Mel, when you get out, my understanding is that you actually reconciled with the man who was the detective that put you into the pen in the first place.
Yes. So I didn't know Chris Bayless, who was the ATF agent. I didn't know him when he was doing this undercover stuff. He did not infiltrate Chicago, our chapter, because he grew up in the town next to me. And him being 10 years older than me, he kind of figured, listen, Mel knows everybody all around here, from the mobsters to the gang guys to the street guys. They were worried about cross-contamination. Somebody saying, hey, this guy's an ATF agent. So he got in with the Rockford Hells Angels, which is 2 hours, Rockford, Illinois, 2 hours from us in the city.
So basically he was undercover.
He was undercover. And one of the members brought him in. One of the members got busted and flipped and introduced Chris to come in. And he was a prospect for the Rockford chapter. And his whole goal was to get me and the fellows on this RICO. So he had to do it from the side, you know. So I didn't know him until the day we got our doors kicked in. And they took us to the federal courthouse in Peoria, Illinois. And I was in my street clothes, and we were sitting there getting arraigned, you know, to see if they're going to give us a bond. No bond, of course, for all the violence. And I looked over and I seen a biker-looking guy. He had a ponytail, a beard, sitting with the U.S. attorney. Well, I knew what the U.S. attorney was because I was already in federal prison so I kind of knew him. The other three guys never been to federal penitentiary. So I said to the fellas, I said, guys, who's the biker-looking guy that's sitting next to the U.S. attorney? And the two Rockford Hells Angels, there was two Rockford Hells Angels and me and my sergeant of arms. So it's two Chicago Hells Angels, two Rockford Hells Angels got the indictment. And I said, who's the biker-looking guy sitting next to the U.S. attorney? And the Rockford Hells Angels kind of looked down and they go, we found out this morning he was an undercover agent. He was our prospect.
Wow.
And I said, wow, okay, that changes the game there, right? And so that's how I got to know who he was. And then through sitting and with our lawyers coming in and sitting down and figuring out, you know, I knew I wasn't going to take this to trial. There's no way, Lee, I could have won all these different charges. Sure. No way. And my lawyer was my 25-year friend at the time. And I was getting mad for a while, and I'd say, you know what, PJ? Forget sitting down with these guys. They don't want to drop this drug conspiracy. There's all this stuff, all these lies from the guys that came in before us and hit the grand jury and told a bunch of lies because, you know, they were trying to shorten their time up.
Sure.
And, you know, we're responsible for this and all this drug weight they're trying to put on me. I go, if the U.S. attorney and they don't want to talk about this, forget it. I'm not doing this. Let's take him to trial. And he said, Mel, I can't do this with you with trial. He goes, because when you get this 24, 25 years, I can't look your mother in the eyes. We can't beat this in trial. And I said, yeah, I kind of figured that. So we sat down and what they call a proffer. We sat down and said, okay, and this is what I said, I'll plead guilty to. But which worked out great for the other three fellows because they had us under a RICO indictment, a racketeering indictment, and then they had a drug conspiracy on all of us. By me coming clean and being honest in this sit down, they dropped the drug conspiracy against these other three individuals because of what I cleaned up. Because, like I said, a lot of guys came in and got a deal and we told a lot of stories, and these other three guys were never part of this drug conspiracy that I was a part of.
Okay.
The drug trade was my personal deal, and these guys never had a part of it. So when I said in there, these guys never bought drugs for me, sold drugs for me, I don't know where that came from. They dropped the drug conspiracy. So they pled. That's why they got the 50 months. They were able to plead to one count of the racketeering, where I had to eat the drug conspiracy and the racketeering charge, which gave me that 111 months.
So you and this undercover detective eventually become friends. Mm-hmm. And the reason I know that is because you've told me that, which I think is just amazing.
Best of friends.
Can you talk about that?
Like family now, yes. So after I plead guilty and get the time and everything like that, and I come home from prison, he is now retired. 20-something years on the, 24, 25 years as an ATF agent, he's retired. So lives not far from me. So I called him up and thanked him. I said, hey, thank you for going to bat for me. Thank you for with the U.S. attorney and you guys helping me get that time dropped. And I came clean and you guys gave me a reward for that. Well, that was great. Because like I said, somebody's got to testify. And I always say under these podcasts, nobody can come in and ever say, we had to spend one penny to call a lawyer up because of Mel Chancey or these other 3 individuals. That indictment got dropped right there. The RICO indictment, we pled guilty to. There was never nothing coming afterwards, right?
You took responsibility.
We took responsibility. So I thank them for that. And we started talking on the phone.
Was he surprised that you were thinking?
He was surprised, yeah. He said, in all the years I've did this, I've never had anybody that I was responsible for putting away. He goes, but we seen something in you, Mel. He says, because when you came home the first time and we're on this non-association, all these people were telling him that I was sneaking, I was still running the club, which was the farthest thing from the truth. There was a president and I wasn't taking nobody's phone calls. These informants were telling him that I was dressing up as a woman. Ready for this? 290 pounds. Dressing up as a woman and sneaking into the clubhouse so I can give the orders and make sure everything was running right. So they were watching. They're constantly listening to my phone calls. And they were like, wait a minute, this guy's not even coming around these guys. Now he just quit. He just formally quit the club. They're like, wow. So they seen the change. And that's what Chris and the U.S. attorney told the judge. Usually when somebody gets the indictment, like the other 3 guys, that they were still part of the regime. I wasn't. I was already out of the club, and then here it comes the indictment, and I'm not part of that no more. So that definitely helped out. So when I seen how he was, I thought that was honorable, right? There was no animosity with each other, and we just stayed in contact, and we became friends. And then I met his family, and he met my family.
Amazing.
And today, I've been home since 2008. So now we're the tightest as brothers as you could think of. And it's just, we have such an amazing story of our friendship together. I don't want to say this in a bragging way, but I was responsible through the Lord to fellowship with Chris, who is now a strong believer.
He converted because of you.
Yeah, and he was going through a lot of stuff after retirement, some PTSD. They did a lot of undercover work, not only in motorcycle clubs, but in home invasion crews, a lot of stuff that he was going through some personal stuff. And I was there for him. And he says it the best. He said, Mel was that vessel for me when I needed it, and God placed him in my life. And I always say that no coincidences in the kingdom.
No coincidences in the kingdom. Mel, so you make this amazing transformation into life, as we know it, and a life as a believer. You're now a motivational speaker. I'll call you a pastor, a guiding voice to many young men.
Yeah.
And you have a daily devotional on Instagram, which, by the way, guys, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's amazing. It's a daily devotional that Mel does. John 3:16.
John 3:16 devotional team.
Yeah,
the shirt,
which is just totally amazing. How do you take what you lived through and turn it into something to uplift others? It gives you a perspective that you can use to help others, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I really seen the platform that the Lord has given me because, doing podcasts like this. I did the John Bernthal podcast a couple years ago. The Nick Humilitatis Always Forward podcast, and people watch that on YouTube. And the street people, the Mel Chanceys in life, and the motorcycle club guys, and the street gang guys, and everything, are watching this. And all of a sudden, my DMs are blowing up, and they're saying, "Hey, Mel, maybe they might have known me a little bit before in the old days, and they might not have, but they were saying, we listened to you. We seen something in your eyes, and we heard you talking, and wow, we want that. We want to know how did that happen with you?" And I said, through the Lord. I didn't do it myself, because the 25-year-old, 26-7-year-old Mel Chancey, I wasn't leaving the club.
Right.
If I didn't go to prison or something like that didn't happen, I would be a tombstone somewhere, or I'd be doing 100 years in prison.
Right.
I wasn't voluntary leaving. I had the best of everything. I didn't have to work. I had an amazing amount of money coming in. I had girls in every port, and I was bodybuilding. It was everything that a young man that I was looking at could dream of, right? And but he had a bigger plan. And then I seen it, and I said, one time I said, Lord, okay, if this is what you're going to do with me, then expand my platform. Boy, I didn't know what I was praying for, because now it's, we have the John 3:16 devotional team, which we do something with the boxes of hope, which feeds the children, which, and so on and so on. It's just like, it's so amazing, the platform, and I see it. And what the great part about it is I am able to fellowship with guys that I talk to guys from every motorcycle club.
That's amazing.
That are still in their clubs. And this is what I tell them when they reach out to me on a DM. When they reach out to me about the Lord, I say, here's my phone number. It's too much for them. And I'm half blind. I'm like, I can't see without my specs, right? So just call me, please.
The two of us.
Right. Just call me. And that brother will get on the phone with me. And I tell him this. You're active in your motorcycle club right now. Yeah. There's a reason you're reaching out to me. Because Mel Chancey wasn't reaching out to nobody back in the day to leave that club. But you've seen this podcast, it touched your heart. You're a hardcore dude where you're at. God's tapping on you, man, and I'm here for you.
So your platform is growing, and I'm going to just use what you mentioned about John Bernthal to segue into this. But you actually have your life story being made into a movie by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who you know very well. He's a friend. He's a good friend of yours.
A great brother.
John Bernthal, who's also a great friend of yours, is the executive producer.
Yes.
And it's called Saints and Sinners of Second City. Tell us about your project.
So when me and Dwayne, I call him DJ, when me and The Rock hooked up on this in 2018, to tell the story. And Dwayne's always, he does the big movies and everything, but he loves stories, great stories, the redemption story. And that's what he told me. He said, Mel, I knew your story. We ran in similar circles, the wrestling. His dad, my 30-something-year friend, was Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan. Him and his dad were tight. We have another mutual friend, Brian Adams, a wrestler that passed away, that was tight with DJ, Macho Man. I was always a wrestling fan too before I met Hulk, and he brought me in over there a little bit. So I got to know them guys. They got to know me. DJ knew the former story, and he said to me, okay, I know all the Hell's Angel past stuff, and when you were big, and we knew all that. He goes, but the redemption stuff is really what is at the heart of this. And he goes, how much of the old can you tell? And I said, I could tell it all. I said, because everything they charged me with, it's I paid the penance for it. There's no hidden skeletons in the closet. Nothing's coming out. Nobody's getting charged. I can say the whole entire story. And I said, Dwayne, I have the retired ATF agent as my dearest friend that could tell his part of the story on this. And he goes, amazing. He said, let's get with my $7 production team and we'll start the journey. Wow. And it's just been so incredible to watch this unfold, and then to him to pick John Bernthal to play me, right, in the story. And he didn't know at the time that John is my partner, Sidney Gordon from Core Medical's brother-in-law.
Isn't that something?
Is it crazy how that works?
Just the degrees of separation.
Yeah, and he didn't know. He picked John because he was in a movie with them. He knew he was a great producer, actor. And I remember when DJ told me, when Rock told me, he goes, listen, this guy can play the guy I'm going to tell you, because he didn't tell me his name. He goes, I think I got the perfect guy that could play you. And I go, who is it? He goes, he could play the old gritty you. He could play the now you. He's a great mind. He's a great producer. He could really do this project good. And I said, okay, who is it? And he said, John Bernthal. And I kind of chuckled.
Out of your chair, dude.
Yeah, I kind of chuckled. And he goes, hold on. He goes, what are you laughing for? He goes, wait, you know him? And I go, yes, I know him. And I go, and I'm going to tell you how I know him. And then we told the story. So, and he goes, wow. And I said, how about that, DJ? The hand of God again, right there. No coincidence.
So that's just such a wild coincidence.
And DJ is, as I always say, he's definitely the busiest man in Hollywood. I mean, he's just, the parts. Yeah, he is so. And I always say this about him. He's such an amazing man. As you know, you heard his voicemail to you. He adores you. You know what I mean? And we talk about you a lot. And being that busy and being as successful as he is at 53, I'm 56. I think he's 53. I admire that, because I think if I was in his position, I might say, I'm just going to be on the beach for the rest of my life. Like, I'm done. I'm good and stuff.
That's the temptation, right?
But DJ,
he does so much.
He just hustles and he stays busy and he loves what he does. And he's always...
That's the key, isn't it?
That's the key. Loves what he does. Yeah. And he's so great. And, I work with his staff is $7 Production. My main guy over there is a guy named Frankie, and a great Frankie's like a little brother to me now after 5.5 years of, kind of putting the story together organically as we're doing. It takes a while to do all this, right? It's got to be done right. And he is just, the staff loves him. DJ is just a great caregiver to everybody, and, give you the shirt off his back. So it's a great story. I'm so looking forward to it. We're right there right now. We're just finishing off on the I's and the T's, and it's going to be something very special.
I'm super excited. I'm looking forward to it. There's a trailer out on YouTube, isn't there?
So it's not out. What you've seen was what we call the sizzle reel.
Okay.
So that will be the documentary. So it's kind of like a 3-part thing. There's going to be a documentary, the movie, and then the book.
Wow, all three
kind of, and I don't know how that's going to play out. We're all in the works right now of what's going to come first, second, or third. I always leave that in his hands.
That's right.
But it's just so humbling to see, and I say like this, God's not moving the way he's moving with this platform because he thinks I need a bigger pool to lay around in, or, more yard to walk in, right? I'm pretty comfortable with my daily bread. So on the financial side, I let him run all that, you know what I mean? But the platform side, I just see what this, just from the podcast we're talking about, I see what it brings in now. Absolutely. When this thing hits and people get to hear the Mel Chancey story, and maybe it'll touch some extra hearts we're praying for.
I think that is a given. I think that it will touch hearts, move people to explore their faith. Now, let me ask you on that note, because, you hear all these things about how Hollywood really stymies and suppresses faith. And when people talk about their faith, and they're just they're not very good at promoting that or allowing people to express that. In your typical run-of-the-mill, day to day creative that they put out, in the movies and documentaries. Will your documentary allow you to talk about your conversion, your faith?
Yeah,
I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
We say this over there as part of being part of the team. I call it the team that we're on. That is not getting cut out. If that is the deal breaker, then it's a wrap.
Yeah.
And
there's really no movie without the conversion.
No, think about it. Because if you were just trying to tell a story about an outlaw biker, you could tell that's a story as old as time. Or if you want to tell a story of the undercover ATF agent and the good guy, bad guy, it's a story as old as time. But the story of the conversion and of the redemption and how I helped, Chris and touched his life, and he's preaching out to people, and we all plant that seed. We all have that platform, right?
It's the prototypical prodigal son. It's the story of the prodigal son.
Yeah, everybody that I meet and talk to, and then they go, "Wow, you remind me of the Saul/Paul conversion, right?
Yes.
On the road to Damascus, right?" And my road to Damascus was in them prisons. But so that has to be part of it. And if it was somebody said, we like all this other stuff, but we don't like the part with your Lord and the faith and everything like that, I'm not doing the deal, right? That's part of the journey. You have to tell the journey. We're keeping it real, right? And that's the most important part. And that's what Dwayne has been on since the beginning. He loves that part. He says that you're the redemption, what you do now, the John 3:16 devotional team, the boxes of hope, what you do at Core Medical, and it's great because and then the IFBB NPC, I get to do stuff I love, but I get to fellowship with people because there is a movement now, as we see. I mean, I just read something right now. They said Bibles have never sold as many as they are now. There's a revival going now in the world that's in likes of we never seen. Right?
I do believe that. I think there's an awakening going on.
An awakening, yes. Yeah. People are starting to say, wait a minute, look at all this stuff that's happening.
There's got to be more than this, right?
Yeah, like I say, listen, Nostradamus predicted in 2000 the world was going to end, remember? Mm-hmm. Or the computers was going to shut off. Funny story, I was locked up at 2000 in Y2K. So on New Year's Eve night, 99 into 2000 in the penitentiaries, every guard and the wardens were there because they thought at the stroke of midnight, all the computers were going to shut down and the gates were going to open. So
crazy, isn't it?
everybody was there. And I was short. I was coming home in like 9 months, and I was laughing with the one ward, and she was a lady, and she was super cool. She brought me some chocolate chip cookies, Lee. She goes, "Hey, Mel, you're always cool to everybody in there." She goes, "I made some cookies. I brought you some for, last up, right?" And I said, "Well, you don't have to worry about me. If the cell door is open and the gate's open, I'm not going nowhere. I only got about 8 months left, right? I'm not running, right?" So, obviously that didn't happen.
Right.
This Nostradamus dude's been wrong. But if you know the Bible and you listen to the Word and you read the Word and you go from the Old Testament into the New Testament and see how many prophecies were fulfilled, even if you're not a believer, you have to look back and say to yourself, wow, what a coincidence.
Sure.
This is lining up just the way this 100-year-old book is talking about right now. It has to make you think.
It has to make you think.
And that's what, when I talk to people about it, they go, "Yeah, wow, you're so true." I'm like, right. So if whoever inspired this book or wrote the book must have some divine knowledge, right, guys? And they'll go, "Yeah." I said, "Okay," because Nostradamus was wrong about everything so far. Nobody that predicted everything was right, Only the Simpsons, right? Only the Simpsons shows everything that they did was right. But
remember that?
Yeah. So I think that people are wanting to know, and that's what I believe. God created us, and he put that longing for us in his heart, even from the atheist. If the atheist doesn't believe that we were created by God, okay, leave it be. But why do they always fight it? Why do they always fight? You don't see anybody ripping on Buddha. You don't see anybody ripping on Allah, but everybody rips on Jesus Christ.
I've seen that.
Why is the attack there? There's no attack on them other guys. The attack is on our Lord, right? Because everything's true and everything is getting brought into the light. And when you're living in darkness, who wants to get brought into the light, right? Me living in that darkness, the last thing I wanted to do was be in a courtroom when it was getting dull. The light was on me, and they're like, "Listen to Mr. Chancey's deeds right here." And I was sinking down under the table like I didn't want nobody to see me. So I think that's why everybody right now is longing to search.
They are awakening. Now,
Yes.
Let me ask you this, because this is something that I think that a lot of people struggle with, and some people struggle with addiction. For others, it's violence. Others, they're just stuck in their head. What would you say to these people that are suffering through these things?
Good question, Lee. Well, I struggle through the same thing, so I will talk about that. I always say that the devil was a created angel, right? They said the most beautiful angel up there, right? He rebelled, right? So he's been around a very long time. He knows the plan. He knows he loses. He knows the outcome, right? Time's short, right? So he knows, as when we become believers and we give our life to the Lord, where to come and hit us at, right? So use me. He can't throw some cocaine on the table or some heroin or some drugs, because it was never my struggle. I never was a recreational guy like that at all. But my struggles being the women and the violence, that's something that's going to be with me forever. Hence why when people say...
Is that something you still struggle with?
Of course. And people say to me all the time, "Mel, you don't even ride?" And I said, "Nope, I haven't been on a motorcycle since 2004.
Really?
Yeah. And they say, "No motorcycles." And they go, "You didn't like riding?" I go, "No, I enjoyed riding. I was in a motorcycle club." Of course I did. But in my mind, I look at that as my past is an alcoholic. You're not going to hold a Jack Daniels bottle under the alcoholic's nose, and he might get away with it one time, but when you keep putting it under his nose, he's going to go back to what he knows. And
you look at the motorcycle almost as a trigger.
Yeah, trigger.
It would trigger you.
Yeah, I don't dip my toe back into that pool. I don't go to strip clubs because that's where I hung. I was, it was easy. I loved the strippers back in the day, just, as being a young man, and the biker bars and the violence and stuff. So I have to stay centered with the Lord. And I tell these guys when they talk about their past and everything, I said, guys, we're not meant to get up in the morning time and say, "Thank you for the day, Lord." And then 12, 13 hours later, whatever it is when we go to bed, say, "Thank you for the day." A lot of things happen in that day, right? I'm on the phone with a lot of people. with the IFBB, the NPC, with Core Medical. I'm traveling a lot. I'm face-to-face with a lot of people. And not everybody got the memo. I call the memos knowing the Lord. Not everybody has the memo in life. So they're not always the best people. And then some people might know my past, but they see that I'm a believer. And then they're like, well, he's okay these days. So I can talk to him like this, or I could talk to him like that. And that starts getting me going, right? So the triggers. So we have to know the battle. And when you know the battle,
you have to know the battle.
You're going to know when I'm at these big shows.
You have to know what triggers you.
You have to know what triggers. Yeah. When I'm at the shows, I don't leave my hotel room. I get down on my knees and next to my bed, and I pray, okay, Lord, I'm going down in the convention center. You got me. Bless me with the time to fellowship with somebody who is in real need. You know, I wear these John 3:16 devotional team bracelets, right? Mm-hmm. And I have thousands that are made. So I wear these on my wrist. And when I'm going through an airport or I'm talking to somebody, if they say, oh, we love your shirt or a nice cross or something, and I know they're a believer, I say, thank you. I take this off and I put it right on their wrist. And they look at me and I go, that's for you. And then I go in my backpack and put another one on because I have thousands made.
Wow.
I pass these on.
Neat.
Yeah. So,
I like that.
You know, I get down on my knees and I say, use me as a vessel down there. Protect me because, you know, what's waiting down there for me.
Yeah.
You know,
you're a target.
I'm in an industry full of women, bikini girls and everything like that. So I have to stay prayed up because the old Mel Chancey nature would already screwed this IFBB NPC thing up already because I would have been in some scandals.
Yeah.
And, you know, I could never do that. So, but without staying prayed up and centered up. So I always tell people, I don't know too many people that could just get up in the morning, say, thank you, Lord, go to bed at night, say, thank you, Lord, and not fellowship through the day. I have to get centered so many different times, so many different phone calls. I'll get off a phone call or dealing with somebody's energy that doesn't have the memo is draining, right? We're all spiritual beings. So it's like sometimes you get drained and I have to recharge the batteries, and I do it through my fellowship time, knowing the word. I tell people all the time, you have to know the word. The word's the truth. And if you don't know the word, you're going to be deceived.
100%.
And Lee, look at so many people, I mean, that we know. Look at family members against family members. There's so much deception going on in the world right now. Hence what Christ said when the disciples said, how are we going to know the times? And he laid it out, what's going to be like in the times. And we are seeing them words right on paper now, coming off the paper.
And it's in the Bible. My audience knows that I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. And I can tell you that I haven't lived the perfect life, but by the grace of God, I'm saved. Still, there's times that, you know, that I have negative thoughts creep into my mind. Does that happen to you?
Yes.
And so I'm curious what you do to reframe or to get those negative thoughts out of your mind and get back on thoughts of the Spirit.
So I have a great Bible app I listen to. I tell people all the time, when you're traveling, active like you and myself are and stuff, you can't read the Bible all the time. You can't read the Bible when you're in the shower. You're definitely not reading the Bible as you're going to the airport, driving yourself, whatever. So I have a great Bible app I listen to, and people DM me. Anybody wants the great Bible app, I'll hit me up on a DM, and I listen to the words. So after I stumble, because we all do, after I might be somewhere and my eyes wandered too far off on a woman, or I got some violent thoughts in my head because, you know, maybe this chairman wasn't a great guy in the industry, and
he angered you.
Oh, and he angered me, and, you know, I might have told him, when I see you next time, I'm, you know, giving you a crack. And he's calling up Jim Mannion and going, Mel said, and this is great because Jim always says, well, you must have did something to bring Mel there. You know, Jim, you know, as we love Jim always tells him, you did something for him to say that to you. So be honest with me and let me know what you said. Well, yeah, I got a little loud with him. Well, what did you expect? He said, you know how Mel was going to be. But I don't want to be that guy, right? I don't want to be
that's not who you are.
Guy. It's not me, and it upsets me, and it gets me, you know, it drains me when I'm in some kind of, you know, altercation, whether it's on the phone, or it drains me when I had them lustful thoughts that lasted too long. So I regroup. I fellowship first and foremost. I get into the Lord. I say, Lord, you know, you created me. I'm sorry for stumbling. Strengthen me and take this away from me. Like Paul said, I was given a thorn in my flesh. Now, we don't know what that is in the Bible. It doesn't say what the thorn was. But he said 3 times I asked the Lord to take it from me, and the Lord said, my grace is sufficient enough for you, right? So whatever that thorn was stayed.
Right.
maybe that thorn with a guy like me is that going to keep me on my toes, is that womanizing, that lusting, and that violence, whatever it is. But he said, my grace is sufficient. So I give it to him again. Say, forgive me for that. The way I'm thinking, the way I'm looking, or, if I was a little flirtatious, or my mind's gone, or I was a little bit hard on that guy on the phone, but you're going to take this away from me. And I say this, when you're a believer and you put your trust in God and your fellowship with him, he's going to take you through seasons. And I watched him do it with me. It's like this. I say, jump in the raft in the lazy river, give him full surrender, and he's going to move you around life like this. I never thought I'd leave the club. Here I am all these years later. I'm out of the club since 2004. 20 years, right? 21 years.
And you're so much more blessed for it.
In doing the things I never thought. I told you when I first got to finally meet you 15 years ago, I said, Lee, I'm going to tell you a story that's going to kind of blow your mind. I grew up flipping the magazines to you, I told you, right? You and Lee Haney. That was my two guys, right? I was like, wow, I just ripped the pages out of Flex and Muscle and Fitness, and I'd put them on the gym wall, and that's what I would do. Then I got to read about your stories and how you were married at such a young age to Robin. Then your faith. Then I'm like, oh, same with Lee Haney. Married his wife at such a young age, his faith. And you guys were putting your belief in the Lord out at a time when nobody was doing it in the bodybuilding industry. It just wasn't happening with your wives and everything. And I told you, I said, God, did I admire that so much? I didn't live that way, right? Of course, I had, I say the harems, because I was a womanizer. But I used to say, look at these guys. They're my bodybuilding heroes. Their faith in the Lord, because I had that faith in the Lord at 16, 15. I still wasn't in the club, and I was still the way I was looking at you guys in the bodybuilding magazines. And then I come over and start doing what I'm doing for Jim Mannion, and I get to meet you and Lee.
Yeah, and we just clicked.
And we just clicked. Same with him too. And I just love it that we get to fellowship spiritually, but that we get to hang out and talk and everything like that. And I see Lee, and when, not too long ago, I had a breakfast with Lee. It was me, him, Steve Weinberger, Gary Udit, and we were all at the breakfast table. And
it's a great bunch of guys.
Yeah, great crew. And all of a sudden Lee goes, hey, Mel, you going to lead us in prayer? I said, Lee, I would love to. And I was like, just when I was praying, I was like, Lord, wow. Never, as a young kid, I never thought I was, you never think you're going to meet your heroes. I don't like to call anybody an idol, but you never think you're going to meet your heroes back in the day. And who would ever thought that I would be doing what I'm doing? I knew who Jim Mannion was from the magazines. I knew who Steve Weinberger was from the magazines. Never did I think I was going to come home and meet these guys at junior nationals in my backyard in Chicago. And you would have told me even back then in 2009 when I met him, if somebody would have told me you are going to be working for Jim and running all this stuff and meeting, I still wouldn't have believed it. And I was already, walking with the Lord. And I just, I stay humbled and grateful for that, because I see the gifts that he gives. And it's not only to me, it's not only to you, it's to the believer. Them words are to the believer. I'm going to give you your daily bread. I'm never going to leave you or forsake you. So when I start to struggle, I put them words on there. Okay, Lord, we know he can't lie. You said you're never going to leave me or forsake me. You're here with me right now. I know I'm going through a little bit of a turmoil right now, but you're with me. And that's what I would do in prison. And then when I'd get the blues in prison, because listen, being locked up is not cool.
No.
And I thought it was before I went away.
Mentally, it's got to be so tough.
It's just not cool. And, as a young man, I used to say to the new guys coming in, you ready for this? Well, there's two spots, the Tombstone or the Penitentiary. And I thought that was like a cool line until I got there.
Yeah.
And then I said, this is not cool. I lost my freedom. And I didn't have any problems in there physically.
Sure.
Didn't have no problems. I was a big dude. Everybody knew what my past was. The Hells Angels stuff was in play. I did not have any physical problems. But when them doors were slamming, or when my, 70-something-year-old mother at the time was leaving the visiting room in tears, that just ripped my heart out.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Like, what am I putting him through,
That's the most painful part. Seeing the pain that you put other people
I would go back to my cell and I'd be in tears, not for myself, right? Because I was okay in there, but for what I was putting everybody through, So that's what I use as the fuel. And that's what I would suggest to everybody, really get in that deep fellowship and take his word and declare it on your life like it says. The word is not just something you're just reading. It's the living word, right? And declare it on your life. I know you got me. I'm okay. Whatever happens. I was just telling, we had a guy back in my neighborhood and a friend, and he was a non-believer. He got cancer, and it took him within a year. But about 6 months into this cancer, when he was really going downhill, he decided he wanted to know the Lord. And he wanted to know him, and he got to know him, and he gave his life to the Lord, and he was studying the word, and he was, a priest was coming in and talking to him and stuff like that. And I said to our other friends, he changed his address. Yeah, he changed his address, because you know what it says. When you die without the Lord, you're going to be eternally separated from, and that's what they call hell. He changed his address when he gave. The Bible says this, right, Lee, as you know. When you call upon the name of the Lord, you shall be saved. Somebody asked me not too long ago, after the Jeffrey Dahmer podcast, or the Netflix thing came out with Jeffrey Dahmer, right? And they said, "What do you think about a guy like that?" Yeah, he gave his life to Christ when he was in prison. So all them people he murdered and everything, he's forgiven. I said, this is what the word says. You call upon the name of the Lord, you shall be saved. I said, and we don't ever know when that day is coming. If Jeffrey Dahmer or I would have got hit in a motorcycle when I was running the club and I wasn't in fellowship with the Lord, I had a different address I was going to. We don't know the last breath. If we did, we'd all live like hell. If we knew when we were going to die, right, and I was that young kid, I'd be like, well, let me continue to do this crazy stuff that I love to do. And then right before I'm going to take my last breath, I'm going to say, okay, Lord, I'm calling upon your name. Well, we just don't know when that time is, right?
It's not the way it works.
It's not the way it works. So I tell our friends, he changed his address, and now he's in the presence of the Lord, because the Bible says that. And you can't take one part and, you have to, it's all truth. So I say, Jeffrey Dahmer, if he really did it, and he did it from his heart, and he called upon the name of the Lord, he is with the Lord. Now we know when we get there, we have gifts that we're going to be given, right? So the Lord's going to say, okay, Jeffrey, you missed out on you missed out on a lot of stuff here. You're not going to get the crowns here. That's whatever happens. That's between us and the Lord. But he called upon the name of the Lord. So that's what I tell everybody, because you're not going to call upon the name of something that you don't believe in.
Right.
Me and you ain't going to start fellowshipping with unicorns.
There's nothing that is so terrible in your past or so horrible that you've done that it cannot be forgiven if you are truly repentant.
Correct.
And you ask the Lord to forgive you.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's what I deal with and help people out with, because I have a military vet with my company, Core Medical. We're so into the veterans, as me and you were talking about, right? About a year ago, I'm sitting at an event. Me and my partner, Sid John Bernthal, was there making an appearance for us. Great military vet that I know came over. Dinner was done. He said, Mel, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah. We were kind of off to the side of the table. And he said, man, brother, I just don't think I can be forgiven for my sin. And I said, you can't? I go, did you create a new sin that we don't know about in life? I said, because I'm not sure anybody broke any more sins than me. You can't be forgiven. And he told me this story. He said when he was over in whatever country he was fighting in, they put some kids in front of him that were all, had the bombs taped to them and stuff like that. And they had to kill them children. And I said, well, brother, I'm going to tell you this. God already knows what's happening here. There's evil in the world. If you go back to the Old Testament, God says, purge the evil, get rid of it and stuff like that. You know the Lord. I go, I think I know you pretty good. I think you know the Lord. He goes, I do. I said, you have that fellowship with him. That is, our sins are forgiven as far as the east is from the west. He knew you were going to be in that situation. God didn't just fall asleep and open his eyes up and go, oh my God, I didn't know you were going to do that. He knows the beginning from the end. He knew I was going to join the motorcycle club. He knew at the end I was going to be doing what I'm doing and sitting right here today on this podcast. So I told him, you are forgiven. There's one thing in the Bible says that's unforgivable, and that's blasphemy, right? Of the Holy Spirit, given credit to Satan and his minions and taking it away from the Holy Spirit. Now, I don't think too many people that are believers are blasphemers, as you're done with doing that. So a lot of guys have a hard time thinking that they can be forgiven for their past. And, I try to help them out and explain it to them the best way I can. And that's why I said, knowing the word, you have to know the word. The word tells you the truth, and it is the truth. You can't just say, well, I believe Isaiah, but I don't believe Matthew.
Right.
You have to believe everything that's in there. And he tells you.
It's one book, and it's all in there.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. When you look back on your journey, from biker president to a preacher, and from prison to the inspiring man that you are today, what do you want people to remember Mel Chancey for?
Not sure I was ever asked that question. That's a good one.
Should we come back to that one?
Yeah, I think I love to help people out and to give back, and that's what's so rewarding to me. Because let's go back to the bikers. They weren't grooming me. They just seen a young kid in the gym that was enthusiastic about training, and they trained the old school ways. They trained. They were bent over rowing, squatting, deadlifting. They took me under their wing to show me, hey kid, come here. You're doing that wrong. Let me show you the right way to do it. We see the encouragement you have, the inspiration and stuff like that. All through my life, I've always had somebody that is looked out for me. And
you felt that, right?
I felt that, yeah. And I love it now that I get to do that. Just, like with your son, with Hunter, and all these younger generation bodybuilders that I see, and Dan Solomon and them guys, they gave me the nickname. They said, Mel's like our big brother. If we need something, we call him up on the phone. If we need some fellowship, he's there for us. People know if you're DMing me, and especially if it's something to do with life or your faith or you're having a hard time, I am getting back a hold of you. Now, if you're DMing me about, hey, I'm taking these steroid cycles, yeah, you're probably not going to get me. But you know what I mean? When it's the fellowship time, I'm getting back to everybody.
Right.
So I love that part of it, that I get to help out my core medical company. I get to help out people with the hormones the right way. I can't tell you how rewarding it is. And I got a funny thing is, we have patients all over the United States. We can treat all over. And I'll get a guy that comes in, sees me from the social media. Okay, Tim, nice to meet you and stuff. I talk to him. Okay, get you on my intake, man. He gets the medications. 4 weeks later, he's calling me up. He said, Mel, man, brother, do I feel amazing. Wow. And these are guys that never knew about hormones, right? Sure. Normal guys, not, like we knew about them, normal guys. And then one time the guy goes to me, he goes, hey, Mel, I know it's a weird thing, but would you mind if I FaceTime you? I want to introduce you to my wife. And I said, sure. Mike, go ahead, FaceTime. He FaceTimes me. This is my wife, so-and-so. I said, nice to meet you. She said, Mel, I just wanted to thank you. Thank you for giving me my husband back. And I'm like, well, he was always there.
Yeah.
He just needed a little help out here, right? You know what I mean? When the hormones are tanked, we know life ain't running good, right? So that to me is worth more than any gold or silver.
So it's about helping people.
It's about helping people. I love being that guy. My mom, my dad and my mom were the same way. They had a group of friends, and if somebody in the circle was a little less fortunate, they were all helping out.
That's great.
Here's some furniture that we're getting rid of. Let's do this. Let's do that. I've always watched that growing up in that family. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and I always heard growing up. I always heard we're all here to walk each other home.
That's a good one. Yeah. Think about that. We're all on the journey.
We're on the journey together.
Yeah.
Right.
And why make it miserable when the world's a hard place as it is? So I love that. And if I could be, when I'm gone and the good Lord takes me home, if some people were sitting around a campfire and they said, Mel was always a great dude to us, always there to help out, always answering his phone for us, always there for that brother in need. I say this, Rock Bottom has built some of the best relationships with the Lord, what I've seen, especially seeing it in prison, right? But rock bottom, how you got there is different for everybody.
Sure.
Whether you got to rock bottom from a bad marriage, a drug abuse, biker misdeeds, we're all in rock bottom. I can't say to the guy in rock bottom, hey, you loser, what are you doing here?
Right.
We're all in the same place, right?
In the same boat.
And when you get out of that rock bottom, it would be an injustice not to try to help the brother out that is in rock bottom.
I love that.
So I always say I'm the first one that'll lean over that pit and get down on my knee and say, hey, brother, here's my hand. Let me help you out. But there is a fine line of you helping him out and him pulling you in. And sometimes you got to know when to cut and pull back, and just continue to pray for that brother, because he is not
Quite there yet.
Yes. And he is not trying to pull you in. He's not trying to hurt you, but it's draining. And that's when I've had to do in relationships where I had to cut and say, okay, I'm just going to sit back and pray for this brother, because he needs more than he needs the depth of the Lord. So, being that good Samaritan and helping that brother out. That's
I love that.
To me, that's, if I could write that on the head of the tombstone, that would be the words.
That's great.
Yeah.
Mel, so I'd like to ask you, are you working on any other projects? I know that you have the big film project, the documentary. You're working you mentioned your medical company. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so my core medical group, hormone replacement therapy for men and women. I've been a partner with Sidney Gordon, who is the CEO of the company, for the last 8.5 years now. Core Medical has been in business for 15 years, but about 8.5 years ago, I got introduced to Sidney through a mutual friend here, and we just took it to the next level. So I say with Core, right? And
hormone replacement therapy is becoming a really big thing. Back in the day, it used to be that only women were given certain hormones during menopause and such, but now you have what they call male andropause, and so a lot of men are resorting to hormone replacement therapy as they get into their 40s and 50s. Let's talk about that. And do you think that's really important?
Well, of course, back in the day, like if a male came in and he was under 40 and he had a very low testosterone, he had a pituitary problem. Nowadays, we're seeing 24-year-old, I don't want to say a kid, but a 24-year-old young man who's coming in with 100 and 200 score on their testosterone, which the range is 300.
Why do you think that's happening?
The foods, all the hormones that they're pumping in the foods, because we'll see this youngster come in and his testosterone will be 100, 200, 300 or whatever, and the estrogen will be crazy. The FSH and LH in the testicles are shut down, and the overall testosterone is so low, right? And we have this saying, guys our age, Lee, we say, them girls didn't look like that when we were in high school or when we were in grade school, right? Well, nothing changed in the reproductive system, right?
Sure.
What's different? The hormones.
Right. So you think they're getting it out of the food supply? The
food supply, and they're filling it with all these hormones and everything. And, so now we're treating patients that are, 24, 25, 26 years old that are coming in with bottomed out overall and free testosterone levels, estrogen sky high, having all the symptoms, right? So, things have changed so much now. So hormone replacement is such a powerful thing right now. As we've known about the hormones forever, right? Bodybuilders and stuff like that. But the average guy that's out there, and he goes to his conventional doctor, and the doctor tells him, okay, Tim, you're 45 years old, your testosterone's 301, you're right in the range. Well, what happened to the other 700 points I'm supposed to be? Or what about the estrogen? They don't check that until you're coming to a hormone specialist. And the hormones hold hands. The testosterone, the estrogen, the FSH and LH for men, that's the hormones in the testicles. Women, estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. Usually when something's way out of whack, there's the kink in the chain, right?
Yes.
So we're able to get in there and fix all that, which is just so amazing.
So Core Medical has doctors on staff that actually monitor the different levels and then prescribe accordingly?
Prescribe, yeah. So we send the local patient. We can treat in any state. We have 3 doctors. We can treat in any of the states, telehealth medicine. We send the patient to their local testing facility, whether it be Quest, LabCorp, they're private, whatever like that. They come in through us, pay us the price for the blood work, and then they go in, get all that blood work done. And that's everything from a CBC. You're seeing, our doctors want to see everything from your cholesterols, your liver enzymes, your white blood cells, red blood cells, your PSAs, A1Cs, all that, to a whole hormonal panel, thyroid panel, and everything. So this way, when our doctors look at that, they say, okay, well, let's make our recommendations. They get a hold of the patient on a telehealth call. They tell the lady, okay, Susie, let's open up your email. Let's go line for line. Wow. So, there's no foolery going on. I say, if we send our wife back in the day to Midas and we say, hey, you need a muffler, and all of a sudden they come back and they got a whole brake job and they tricked them, right? You can't do that over here because you're looking at the blood. I always say the blood tells the story,
The
right?
blood tells a story.
Tells a story. So you're going line for line. And when the man comes in and he says, okay, your overall testosterone's 400. You're only in your 30s. You should be up towards that 1,000 mark. But your free testosterone's plummeted. You know, you got the overall and free. Right. You can have a great overall testosterone. You can have an overall testosterone of 1,000. But if the free, if it's not converting in the liver and getting what we call free testosterone, which is what's in the blood ready to go, if the free's plummeted, all that overall testosterone is not doing you no good because it's not in the bloodstream. And I tell guys this, it's like having a bank account and you got 100 grand in the bank, but your wife only lets you have access to 10. The other 90 is no good to you. That's what free testosterone is. So, you know, you got to check all them levels. And it's just amazing what people are starting to realize. The hormones run the body, you know, and if the testosterone's low, if the estrogen in women and the testosterone's low and the progesterone's off, they're going through all these things and the conventional doctor's telling them, you're fine. But what about all these symptoms? I don't know what to tell you about the symptoms, but on paper, you come back great. And then that's where they come to a company like mine and say, we want to be tested and talk to doctors that know what they're doing about their hormones, you know. So the hormone replacement right now is huge. The Core Medical is just huge on the spectrum right now. And, we're so big with our veterans. We got into our veterans. Actually, it's funny because me and Sid, my partner, he has his own podcast, and we get on there and we say, we're not just for the veterans. We treat everybody, but we became strongly known in that veteran community, which is a rough community. You know, they
have faced challenges.
They're very close. Yes, they're very close to each other. So, you know, you have to treat them right. They have to get that trust in you. And we were blessed with getting that trust from this military community and getting these guys feeling amazing. And actually what happened was 8.5 years ago, me and Sid took about 25 patients, I believe, and treated them for completely free because we wanted to show them you can get off all this VA junk. Me and Sid don't like to talk bad about the VA because we didn't serve. So we let the people that serve talk bad about them because when you go to the VA, they don't want to hear about the hormones, but they'll give you every opiate under the sun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not feeling good here, take this and stuff like that. So, you know, once we got, once we got these veterans feeling good, then they started talking from the top of the mountains, and here we are later.
So the word spread. Now, let me come back to the demographic piece of it. You're seeing these low testosterone levels in young males, but would you say that the average age of your clients is more like over 40, over 50?
Yes, for the most part. You know, I mean, you know, that's what happens normally as we get older, right? Everything starts to decline in the hormones and stuff. So that's, you know, especially with the two hormones, FSH and LH, we got in our testicles. That drops as we get 35. It drops again in the 40s and stuff. And then finally, it almost shuts itself off, right? And that ain't working, right? So when you're putting testosterone in your body, you know, taking the synthetic testosterone like we give you, you have to stimulate the FSH and LH because it's like throwing some nitro in the fuel tank, right? If you're just taking, I talk to a lot of people and they say, well, my conventional doctor is giving me a CC every 2 weeks. I go, well, this is what he's doing to you. He's bringing you on a roller coaster ride because as we know, testosterone, oil-based testosterone, if you're taking a shot and you're getting 6-7 days out of keeping it here, it starts to plummet. It goes back to where your natural levels are going to be. Right. So if a doctor's giving you a CC every 2 weeks, he's really doing this with you. Then the estrogen's going up and down. It's playing a roller coaster. Yeah, a lot of fluctuation. Yeah. And if a good doctor knows what he's doing and he's giving a guy, his dose every week, whether it's a half a CC or a CC, and he's giving it every week, if he's not paying attention to the estrogen and you're a high converter and you can have an overall testosterone right at the top of the range of 1,000, but now here comes the estrogen, the estradiol, and the top of the range is 44. Now you're 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. It's taken away the benefits of the testosterone.
Right.
So when most guys talk to me and they go, well, my doctor's going to put me on a little bit of testosterone a week. Is he giving you the complementary medications? Is he doing something for your estrogen, your FSH and LH? And they say, no. I go, keep my number and here's my card. Keep my number. I'll talk to you in 5 weeks.
Right.
Then they call me in 5 weeks and they're like, well, you weren't kidding. I felt great for 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden I lost everything. I said, but you're probably converting.
Right.
And that's, the hormones hold hands, like we said a little earlier.
And they are complex mechanisms. There's a complex biochemical cascade that happens in your body when you take these hormones. So
yes,
definitely something that if our viewers are considering, it has to be done under a doctor's supervision.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say, because I'm 65 years old, I'm going to say that if you are even in your late 40s, early 50s, and you're experiencing low energy, brain fog,
lack of libido,
and all those things, get your testosterone level checked. At least check it.
Yes.
And so that you can determine your proper course of action, whether hormone replacement therapy is for you.
And this is what I tell everybody. And, and I see everybody in my travels with the IFBB and NPC, it kind of goes hand in hand. And they say, Mel, you own a hormone company, and I said, listen, whether you come to me or not, if you can get your conventional doctor, have him test your overall testosterone, your free testosterone, the estrogen, and the FSH and LH. That'll tell you the story of how the body is running. If he just checks the overall, it's not showing the whole thing.
I'm not sure.
Get that test done. And then when they'll call me up and they say, the doctor doesn't want to do all that. Of course, the insurance company don't want to pay for that because there's no money in it, right? So it's the medications are not expensive for this, right? So then they'll call me up and they'll go, okay, now we'll send you for the real test. Now we send them for the real blood work and stuff and check everything. They go over with the doctor, they call them up, and then the medications get shipped from the pharmacy to them. You're doing your own, the testosterone injection. Sure. The anastrozole, the Arimidex is a pill, and then whatever form you choose for the FSH and LH, HCG or clomiphene, whatever the doctors and you are coming up with that conclusion there, it's very inexpensive.
So, Mel, one more time, how do they find Core Medical?
So Core Medical Group as the website, it's Core Medical Group. Or you can come right through me, come to one of my social media platforms on Instagram. I'm Mel Chancey 316. They can come to me, send me a DM, any way that can do that. So, and then we will go from there. It's a very easy process. So I set you up with an intake coordinator and he gets you all ready for your blood work and stuff. And the hardest thing I tell the patient, you have to fast for the night before for 10 hours for me and go get your blood work done in the morning. And then the rest is on the team of the doctors. They're going to make that tailor-made recommendation for what you need from the men and the women. And then you're monitored by the doctors. You're monitored. Your patient coordinator is making sure you're not going to run out of meds. And you always have somebody. I say over at Core Medical, there's no robots. There's no automatic text going out. You get assigned a patient coordinator, Lee, and that is your lifeline. And if you come in through me, then I'm your quarterback, any questions you have. So it's super cool. We were talking about it earlier because I get to see and help so many people that are down and they don't know what's going on with them. They're like, my doctor says I'm okay. Okay, send me your blood work you just had from your doctor. And then I look at the blood work and I'm like, bro, you're missing out on all this right here. And the doctor don't want to do nothing for you. No, we'll take care of you over here.
That's great. It's a great service. Mel, where can our viewers find you on social media? You mentioned Mel Chancey
316 is the Instagram.
That's the Instagram.
Yeah, my Facebook is Mel Chancey. I have two. I have the personal one and then I have the business one.
Okay.
I have a YouTube channel, but I don't really play with that too much. As busy as I get, right? YouTube is the thing, but that's a hard one.
Gotcha.
And anybody interested in the John 316 devotional team, Core Medical, the bodybuilding shows is where, we're going to talk about.
Let's talk about your bodybuilding shows. You're a promoter. You have several shows.
I am. I have three.
When is your next show?
The next one is August. This is going to sound crazy. I'm going to lie. Whatever that Saturday is, it's the 22nd, 23rd. I believe it's the 22nd. So
right.
Little Mel is my wife. She runs all that back end for me. I kind of just show up to do all the hellos and stuff like that. But April is our first show. August is the second one, and then we do the Holiday Classic, the Mel Chancey Holiday Classic, which is in December.
And those are all NPC shows in Florida, correct?
NPC shows in Florida, yeah. Okay. Punta Gorda, Florida. 10 years now.
Wow, congratulations.
We've been promoting the shows, 10 years as I moved to Florida. Jim's like, I think it's time for you to be a promoter. And I said, well, boss, I don't know much about promoting.
Well, that's right.
And I hooked up with Tim Gardner. I have one show, and that's the April show.
Great guy.
And that's me and Tim Gardner together.
That's great guy.
And then August and December is me and my wife. Is my wife runs all the back end.
That's
which is amazing.
Wonderful.
So, and we love them because it's the shows are so amazing. It's so great to see this new generation, these youngsters coming in, all our new categories and stuff coming in. getting on the stage, we're national qualifiers. And then as, running and helping Jim with everything in the IFBB, said, I get to see these guys that got their pro cards. And then now I see him on the pro stage. I remember watching Derek Lungsford compete in the NPC.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful?
And Hunter, your son Hunter, watched his journey coming up.
I'll tell you I'll share one little story with you. But on that note, with Hunter competing in the NPC, he won the NPC Nationals in 2018.
Yeah, I was there.
On the same stage in Miami, Florida, where I won my class at the NPC Nationals in 1985.
Yeah.
And so it's literally like history repeating itself.
And I was there at that one. I watched that whole thing unfold, and it was so amazing. I knew that story, but it's great for the viewers to hear that. What a moment that was.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Mel, let me ask you this before we go. What words of encouragement would you leave our viewers with?
Might have been the toughest one. I would say, just follow your heart, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if, always be a good person, help out your fellow brother. That's what I say, right? We'll go back to the Bible where it talks about who did the right thing, the Good Samaritan.
Yes.
The Good Samaritan said, here, put this guy in the inn. Here's my credit card or whatever they gave back in the day. Right. Here's a camel, and here's whatever. And when I come back, if I owe anything, I'll pay it for him. But help him out. He was wounded on the side of the road, right? And I think I know the world would be a much better place if we all practice that, right?
Absolutely.
And instead of me, the generation we're in right now, right? And the Lord said, people will be lovers of themselves. And boy, do we see that right now. And it's so amazing because, we were just talking. I just was in your office and in the break, and I said, who's that? And you showed me a picture of your mother and father, right? And me and you came from very strict, loving families where everybody helped one another out, right? And now we're seeing family members that are parted, whether it be over who they voted for or what their belief is. And I mean, brothers that don't talk to sisters, and it's just so bizarre to me, but that's what the Lord said. So I think that if we could pass on that love and that helpfulness, the world would be a much better place.
I love that about you, brother.
Yeah.
This has been so great.
I'm having a ball. We're just getting rolling. I'm so looking forward to the rest of today. And I got to tell a funny story. It was just a couple of days ago, right before I got in. Today's obviously a Thursday, and I got in Wednesday. And I think it was Tuesday you hit me up on a text and you said, oh, and by the way, brother, bring your swimming trunks. Because I got a big pool in my yard. And I showed my wife, I go, geez, if Lee would have told me that, I would have been on this podcast a year ago, right? I'm all about the pool. Everybody knows me when I'm not traveling. I'm at home in my yard, walking the yard in the pool and everything. And we get to go train downstairs here and get some of Robin's cooking tonight. And
it's going to be awesome. We're going to work out. We got a 5,000 square foot gym here. Yeah, and all of the latest cutting edge equipment. We're gonna get a workout. Mel has promised not to kill me in the gym. And how about I had a workout with Branch Warren last week.
Yeah, he told me he trained here with you.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But man, dude, you are such an inspiration. Such an inspirational story of what someone can do, when they turn their life around. I mean, just what an amazing journey. And a spirit-led journey that, and just a role model, for those that are in a painful place or undergoing the challenges that we all face in life.
Yeah.
You're a living testimony to that.
And
the power of redemption, the power of faith, and just doing good.
And I say this: I'm not, obviously there was one perfect person who walked this earth, and that was Christ Himself, but I'm still learning on the journey. And that's the great part about it, because in my fellowship, in my walk with meeting so many, I'm blessed to meet so many people through the IFBB, through Core Medical, through the journey with 7 Buck Production, everything I get to do. And I get to learn, and I get to, that fellowship, that back and forth, really deep down, I got to know the meaning of iron sharpening iron.
Oh, yes.
Like you said, we're walking each other home hand in hand. We're walking each other home. I got to learn that iron sharpening iron, because when I get a message, a DM, and they say, you lifted up our friend, our brother, our sister, and on the team in the morning time, or you inspired me to do this, or you helped make my journey with the Lord so much closer. What an inspirational message that is back to me. And it inspires me. And I get some of the messages, Lee, and I might be in a drought. I might be in that drought season where I'm like kind of down a little bit and I'm drained a little bit. And all of a sudden,
it reinvigorates you.
I get that message. And I'm like, wow, here I am, Lord. I'm kind of sitting here like, woe is me for a minute. Like, what is there more for me to do? You know, like I'm a big Tim Tebow fan, and not for his sports part, right?
Love that guy.
Me too. And I didn't watch him following sports. I was never big into outside sports. I just loved bodybuilding. But once I got to watch what Tim does with his platform and what he does with his charities and everything like that, I'm a huge fan of Tim Tebow's and what he does for the kingdom. And sometimes when I'm relaxing in my pool and I'm not traveling and I have these down days, what I call them, and even though I'm with my family, I say, am I being lazy, Lord? Look at the platform Tim Tebow got. He's go, 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 go. I'm sitting in the pool. Like, am I being a lump just sitting there? But then I always get reminded, and that message will come through. Then it reminds me of, like, we all have a platform. Whether it's one person,
everybody's different,
a million people.
That's right.
We're all doing the same kind of work, and we all have a platform. So then I see that. So I'm just I'm blessed for the journey.
Yes, you are.
To be part of it and to get to experience it.
Yeah, it's been a blessing being here with you today, brother.
You also too, brother.
Thank you, my man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Love you, Joe.
I love you too, man.
Yeah.
Hey guys, help us to grow the Lee Labrada Show by sharing this podcast with just one other person. Would you do that now? Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Leave your comments and feedback below. And also, you'll find the Lee Labrada Show on Spotify. Perfect if you're listening in your car. All right, you guys, stay motivated, get up, and look up. God bless you.
The Lee Labrada Show.
Thunder from a distant shore. Voices in my head imprison me. Wanna hold me down, but I want more. You're the light that's cutting through my pain. You're moving me, oh Lord. I just wanna change.